So I've been working on an argument about the abortion debate, and I've been working on it and working on it and working on it. And it got boring really fast. It got really boring. And I didn't want to put out a video about that. Because the first thing I wanted to ask is, well, when is it a baby? And it's pretty obvious that life begins at conception. At least to me, it's very obvious. I know there are a lot of counter arguments to that. Oh, it's just a clump of cells. It's like, no, it's a baby. Well, what if it doesn't have any brain activity? It's like, what about the babies that are born without brains? They're still people. God, that's a messy situation. But yeah, I mean, at any point in a human life, you can always go back to an earlier point, a few seconds ago, a few days ago, and you always have that life existing before that point until you reach conception, at which point there's no point before that. And so does a human life begin at conception? Well, I mean, everybody knows that a human life begins at conception. Are they a human at conception? Are they person? Do they have personhood at conception? Yeah, they do. It's like, okay, well, that's opening up a can of worms, actually. You would think it wouldn't. You would think that would be the point where you dust your hands off and you say, okay, pro-life wins, everybody go home, we're done, we got this. But I'm here to talk about the gray areas and the middle ground. And the middle ground is messy and complicated, and if you think that I'm making excuses for abortion, I'm really not going to be doing that, and here's why. What about ectopic pregnancy? Ectopic pregnancy is where conception has occurred and the baby is implanted outside of the uterus. And so it would seem that, you get rid of that surgically or with different chemicals. Usually they use chemotherapy chemicals because they really, really need to get it fast. That would be an abortion, wouldn't it? And the reason nobody ever wants to call the removal of an ectopic pregnancy an abortion, like the reason why the nurse was sitting at my bedside saying, don't worry, honey, it's not an abortion, is because an ectopic pregnancy will kill you very dead, very fast. There are actually, at the time that I had my pregnancy, maybe things have changed a little bit, but at the time there were only 2 cases of babies surviving an ectopic pregnancy. One of them was a baby that had gone outside of the uterus all the way over to her mom's intestine, latched onto a fatty tumor and grown from there and survived, which is pretty miraculous and extraordinarily rare. The other case was a highly experimental surgery that I believe took place in France. And if they make that more mainstream and more widely available and they kind of tweak it so that it's something anybody can do, I would love that. I would have loved that then. I would have been so happy. It's like, oh, we can do a surgery to fix that. Awesome, great, do it. But we don't have that technology yet. And an ectopic pregnancy is pretty simple math. You have 2 patients, patient A and patient B. Patient A is going to die because patient B is going to kill them. If you kill patient B, patient A will live. There is no way to save patient B. You pick the option that gives you the highest number of living patients at the end of it. It's not fun, it's not pretty, but that's life. Is it a person? Yeah. My first baby was a person. There was no way to save my first baby. So if conception is the beginning of life, which I think it is, and I think if you're looking for the middle ground in the debate about abortion, you really kind of need to have that. If your entire argument for abortion is, oh, it's not really a person, I don't think you have a good enough argument. And also, if you're trying to see eye to eye with people who are pro-life, they believe it's a person and they kind of have good reasons to believe it's a person, so it's a person. But ectopic pregnancy is tricky. There was this one study that was done. I'm not sure I believe what I read, but they were looking at Catholic hospitals that were struggling to provide proper care for ectopic pregnancy, because technically it was aborting an unborn baby. And it's like, you can't save an unborn ectopic baby yet. The technology is maybe on the way, and I hope it is. We're not there yet. that woman is going to die if you don't do something. And and then I was kind of amused because I was sitting around thinking, well, what would happen if abortion laws applied to ectopic pregnancy? Because that's hilarious. Like in my state, you have to you have to be informed, you have to have a consultation, and then you have a 48-hour waiting period after you've had the consultation. So if you change your mind about the baby or you decide you want to keep the baby, you can do that. And I don't really object to that, but in cases of an ectopic pregnancy, I'm just imagining some poor woman bleeding out in an emergency room cot, and the doctor's just looking and going, no way in hell is any doctor going to sit there and inform her that she has 48 hours to change her mind about the removal of that baby. She's not going to last that long, and on top of that, it's not like the baby's going to grow up so that she can adopt it, adopt it out to somebody else. That's not going to happen. And so that's a pretty gray area. That seems pretty gray. It's like, okay, that's weird. We don't even call it an abortion, because if you call it an abortion, it might be subject to abortion law, and you cannot keep that baby alive, and it will kill mom. And so, that seems like the gray, and we're looking for the gray. That's gray right there. Is it a baby? Oh yeah, it's definitely a baby. It's always going to be a baby. Another thing that I saw that was really cool, well, it wasn't cool, but I saw it and it was interesting. Molar pregnancy. I didn't know what a molar pregnancy was. A molar pregnancy is where conception occurs. The egg meets the sperm. It all goes together, and the egg, for whatever reasons, has been corrupted or damaged, and the thing that results really isn't a baby. And I looked at that and I was like, that's definitely not a baby. Funny enough, it's a cluster of cells. It's a bunch of moles. It's a bunch of tissue growth that occurs inside of the uterus that isn't a baby. It never will become a baby. And it produces pregnancy hormones. So a woman takes a pregnancy test, she finds out she's pregnant, she goes into the doctor for her first prenatal checkup, and they look at the ultrasound, and it's not a baby. I struggle with molar pregnancies, because if life begins at conception, what do you call a molar pregnancy? I really struggle to call it a baby, and that's always a problem, because I went and looked up what the experience of having a molar pregnancy was like, because I was like, well, how do women feel about this, like when it happens to them? And this one woman had written an article about how it really bothered her. She thought it was a baby. And if you're pregnant and you feel pregnant and you are pregnant, it's kind of tricky when you have a precancerous tissue growth. Oh yeah, that's another thing about molar pregnancy. It will definitely cause cancer. So you need to get that out of the U as fast as you possibly can. Which doesn't look so good in the abortion debate. It's kind of like, well, they don't call molar pregnancy removal an abortion, even though conception has occurred, and I don't know if you can call that a baby at all, but conception has occurred, and implantation has occurred as well. But it's like, this is it's never going to be a person, and it will seriously damage the woman who's carrying it. It can turn cancerous, and if it does, it's not good. Cancer is bad, so you have to remove that. And that's such a gray area, in the sense that I still can't figure out if that's even a human being or not, because it's never going to grow up to be a human being in any way, in any capacity. It's just going to be tissue growth. And that's unfortunate, but that happens too. And then the third gray area that I found that was kind of interesting, and I know there are probably other gray areas that I haven't found, but these are the ones that kind of come up more often. IVF. Is IVF, that's the favorite argument of the pro-choice, people. It's like, well, if you have a burning building and you have a bunch of fertilized IVF eggs in a tray, and you have a 3-year-old screaming for his mom, which one do you save? And it's like, well, duh, you save the 3-year-old. But aren't those eggs entitled to human rights and all that stuff? Like, aren't you technically saving a lot more people when you save the eggs? And that seems like such a childish argument. I think you're missing the point. But, I don't know. Ethics is weird. Maybe ethicists would find that a much more interesting argument. It just never really did anything for me. Because I mean, with IVF, and one of the big concerns people have with IVF is the unfertilized eggs that don't survive. And I'm looking at it and thinking, you are trying to create life. You're doing the best you can to create life, to have a baby. That's fantastic. That's wonderful that we have that technology for women who need that technology. Infertility can be really, really devastatingly painful. And it's wonderful that we have a capacity to do something to kind of remedy that if possible. You know, people get to be born. That's fantastic. And you could look at the eggs and say, well, you know, every one of them has been given an equal chance at being that special baby that gets born. And it's like, well, what about all the ones that die? You know, about 20% of pregnancies end in miscarriage. And that number might even be higher because we don't know how many fertilized eggs get flushed before the woman even finds out that she's pregnant. So it could be a very, very high number of dead people. Pregnancy is really dangerous if you're an unborn baby. It's about 19 times more dangerous than climbing Mount Everest, and it's kind of a journey like climbing Mount Everest. Like, everybody looks at pregnancy and says, oh, well, the baby just comes out and everything is very straightforward. You get pregnant, then you have a baby. You know, you wait 9 months and boom, it's like a little oven timer dings and the baby pops out. And there's a lot that can go wrong in pregnancy. There's a lot of things that can stop that baby from making it all the way to birth. And abortion, I mean, abortion is one of those things, but abortion isn't even, you know, even if you took out abortion from that equation, it would still be a lot of people dying. So when you go back to IVF and say, well, is IVF right? It's like, well, you're trying to create life. That's a good thing, isn't it? I don't know. I really struggle with the argument against IVF, and I might go back and do a thing on IVF once I've really, really got that argument down and kind of wrap my head around it. But I don't know. For now, it's like you do what you can to create life. One of the reasons I had an abortion is, I mean, I wasn't giving life to this baby. I was just giving him a dying body, and that just didn't seem right to me. And I mean, I've talked to people now who've had babies who were seriously ill, and it's really beautiful hearing their stories. I saw this one woman's baby was so beautiful. He was so beautiful, and I was like, oh, he's adorable, you know? But that's not the road I took. And I look back at it and it's like, would I take that road? Not for me, no. But there are gray areas, and that's what I'm looking for right now. So if life begins at conception and personhood begins at conception, I'm on board with that. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I lost an 8-week-old pregnancy, and it was a person, and it felt like a person, and I mourned it like a person quite a bit. I mean, it was a blob. It was a blob that was the size of a grape, and it was still a person. It's always a person. There's just no way around that. But that doesn't mean there aren't really weird gray areas, and I think people are very unaware of what those gray areas are, or that gray areas can even occur. You know, a lot of people look at when the pregnancy is a risk to the mother, and if you're looking at late-term pregnancy, you know, sometimes it's like, well, can you wait a week? Can you not wait a week? You know, wouldn't it be easier to just induce labor right now and remove the baby? You know, there's a lot of debate in that end. Nobody talks about what happens when you get pregnant and right away your life's in danger. And nobody wants to call that an abortion because it's so dangerous to a woman that even one law that gets into the books that says, nope, you can't remove that, it's like, that would kill people. That would just kill people. There's no way around that. So yeah, there's your gray area. I'd like to look at more gray areas. I'd like to just kind of keep going down the list of gray areas, but this seemed like a good start, and it's not that same tedious, repetitive, well, it's just a clump of cells, well, it doesn't have brain activity, well, you know. No, if we just start off with conception begins at birth, that's as close to the middle of the debate that we can come to. That's where everybody's going to be able to kind of see eye to eye, even if the pro-choice people might not. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. If you all look at it, if everybody all looks at it as conception is the beginning of life and the beginning of humanity, where's the center point? Then we can kind of look around and see the argument a little more clearly from that spot. And I think that's a good place to start. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later.